Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bourbon and Balance podcast. We have a very special guest on. I'm sitting literally next to Tully this week. I'm not drinking anything alcoholic. I'm, in fact, just drinking coffee.
It would be rather,
inappropriate.
Yeah, probably inappropriate.
It's like 3:00 on a Thursday.
Yes.
But we have Jordan Syatt on. Thank you again. We were just talking, but thank you again for coming on and joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm stoked.
We have very many questions, but at the same time, we also just want to kind of get to know you on a personal level and kind of understand how you got to where you are now through kind of the experiences that you have, that you've had as a trainer and as a nutrition coach for the past, 15 years or something.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Before we get started, Congrats on your engagement.
Thank you.
Yeah. That was pretty recent, right?
Yeah, right in July or end of June. She would kill me if I didn't know.
I literally followed your stories like that day.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
When you were like, she has no idea. I'm going to do it now. But then it was a climax and then I didn't get to see any of it happen.
I know.
Just skipped to the fact that she was like, she said yes.
I had to decide if I was going to get pictures or if I was going to get video. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to go with the pictures because videos are always sort of anticlimactic anyway, unless you have great music behind it, right? Sure. It's like, if you have great music, cool. But if it's just a video of me and it's you hear the trucks going by in New York and someone beeping, it's not that great, but the pictures are good. So
that's what I was going to say. Doing that in New York is a bold move because you could totally get somebody going by who the fuck is this guy?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Get out of the road.
Whenever I watch Dave Portnoy's pizza reviews are always wild in New York because they will say anything. They don't care.
Yeah.
I feel like people in New York have got to be really desensitized to cameras and people doing that kind of stuff on the street.
When I first started filming YouTube videos in New York, I had a huge hump to get over. I vividly remember close to where I proposed when I first moved to New York, because that was where my first apartment was. I vividly remember trying to film a YouTube video and constantly trucks going by, people screaming, and finally it gets quiet. I'm like, all right, we can start going. And as soon as we start filming, someone starts drilling into the concrete, and I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And so finally I was like, you know what? I just have to be able to film a video with unbelievable amounts of noise around me.
Sure.
So it's really, really difficult.
That's the most New York thing I've ever heard of. That sounds like something out of a movie.
Out of Seinfeld or something.
Yeah. Because in Grand Rapids, if we were filming something on the sidewalk, people would duck out of the way.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, they would just get out of the way of the camera.
Oh, in New York, it's the opposite. They will do anything to get in the camera. Yeah. They'll go behind and be like, yo, what's up?
Well, let's dive into it. I want to understand kind of your background coming out of, I guess, maybe just growing up. What sports did you play? What got you into the health and wellness field or kind of direction? And then we can kind of branch off from there.
Yeah. So basically, I got into wrestling when I was 8 years old. My older brother he got picked on a little bit. He was about 3 years older than me. And, we're both short. We're not big, intimidating dudes. We're small. And so my mom was like, all right, I want you guys to know how to defend yourselves. So I'm going to put you in wrestling. And at 8 years old, the only wrestling that I knew of was WWE style wrestling. So I remember just being like, you want me?
There's other wrestling?
I was surprised. I was like, you want me to hit someone with a chair? And she's like, idiot, Olympic style wrestling. So I was like, all right, cool. So I didn't know what it was, but we went and I fell in love with it, absolutely obsessed with it. Did it all the time. I also did baseball and soccer, but wrestling was my favorite sport. So when I got to high school, I beat a junior out for the varsity spot. But I had to cut from 112 pounds to 103 pounds every week, multiple times a week, whenever we were weighing in. And I didn't have the knowledge that I have now about nutrition or cutting weight or anything. So I was just doing the stupid stuff I'm just not going to eat for 3 days straight and also wrestling practice for 2 hours a day. And also I'm going to go in the sauna and go in the hot tub and sweat out, just stupid stuff.
That's always one of the worst cuts as well. On our team, one of my good friends was our 103 pounder and we had the Fat Man Award on our team. So when we went to the banquet at the end of the season, they would weigh us in and whoever weighed the most from what they actually wrestled at got a giant basket full Twinkies and stuff. And so I remember my junior, our 103 pounder weighed in at like 159 or something insane like that. And I think he weighs, if Alex Blackwell is listening to this, I bet he weighs probably like 170, 175 now as a grown man.
Oh my God.
It was like painful to watch him cut, because he'd cut all week and then we'd like go to Burger King on Tuesday night after the weigh-in and eat like a quad stacker and a milkshake. It was like the worst possible way you can think of dieting is how 103-pound wrestlers do it.
That's great.
100%. And what you just described it's exactly what I would do, is where I would starve myself and then I would weigh in, and then after the competition or weigh-in, I would just go and binge eat. But when you see all the other wrestlers doing it, and you're a kid, you don't realize anything's wrong with it.
No, it's normalized.
We're all, except for like the heavyweights, like everyone is basically binging and restricting. And we're all doing it as a team. So it's like, cool, this is just what we do. So I was wrestling varsity. I was in love with it. That's all I was doing. But the issue was, as a freshman, I was 13, 14 years old, and most of the people in varsity were juniors and seniors. So I didn't have enough strength to go up against them. I'd already been wrestling for a number of years, but my strength was nowhere near where it needed to be. So I applied to a gym near my town, basically just being like, hey, can I come and take the trash out and clean the floors? I just want to learn how to get stronger. And the first gym that I applied to, they're like, no, like we don't want high school kids walking around the gym. So I applied to a second gym, and this was a very kettlebell focused gym, and they took me under their wing. Very fortunately, they took me under their wing, but equally, if not more fortunately, they were very science-based. They were huge into like Pavel Tsatsouline, Dan John, Eric Cressy. They introduced me to the science-based world, and I worked there from when I was 14 all the way through high school. And that's where I started coaching people. I first was an intern, just cleaning the yoga mats and doing all that stuff, like paperwork. And then I slowly started coaching the warm up and group classes. And then I went from that to coaching the whole class. And then I went from that to actually coaching people one-on-one so all through high school, I was wrestling and coaching there. And I was like, this is all I want to do. Yeah. And that's when I fell in love with coaching. And that's how I got in the industry.
Nice. And what an interesting gym. I mean, I don't think I saw a kettlebell for the first time until like 2012, maybe here in Michigan.
Like the first CrossFit gym that I entered was probably the first time I saw it. Well, I guess like kettlebells outside of a CrossFit gym or outside of like a gym like that were always like pink and 4 pounds, and like women in the corner of like Lifestyle or Lifetime Fitness would be like swinging them or something. And I was always kind of like, I'll never touch those.
One of my wrestling coaches, he was big into Eastern European training methods. He was like huge into it. And he would bring kettlebells to wrestling practice. And I had no idea how to use them. But when I saw that it was called Punch Kettlebell Gym, I saw that it was a kettlebell gym. I was like, oh, I want to learn more about this stuff, because my wrestling coach swears by kettlebells.
Sure.
And so that was, I think, right when CrossFit was really getting started, like when CrossFit started to blow up. And like you went into a regular gym, there were not kettlebells. Like they just weren't around. So I think it was right around that time. And I was just in the right place at the right time with the right people around.
No kidding. It seemed like the dominoes fell in place for you. Like spot on, especially to be brought up in like science-based is always the best way to go. Like you hate to be directed by, like biased beliefs or practices and whatnot. But when things are science-based, it's hard to argue. Correct. So that's awesome that you started in that realm in the first place. So during that whole time, then as you start coaching and as you start gaining clients and stuff, when did your nutrition change from binging and cutting to then, kind of focusing more on like a balanced diet or a balanced approach to it?
So I didn't even realize anything was wrong with my nutrition until I went to college, because I was wrestling all through high school, and that's basically what all the wrestlers did. And I knew that I had some uncomfortable feelings around food, and I couldn't really fully go out with my like other friends or my family, but it wasn't something that stood out to me as anything that was wrong. Cause when you're in high school, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be an Olympic wrestler. And like, this is just what I do. And Meanwhile, I was nowhere near good enough to be like, anywhere like that. But that's just in my mind.
We all have a dream.
Yeah. And when I went to college and I couldn't go to the dining hall because I was anxious about eating with people there. Like that's when I was like, oh, this isn't all right. And I spoke to my friend David, who I wrestled with since I was in 8th grade, and he was having the same issues. And we were on the phone talking about how we were both struggling with binge eating. He was living in New York. I went to the University of Delaware, and he would tell me how like he would literally at like 10, 11 midnight, he would go to the local store and he'd get like a whole bag of bagels and just eat them on the train so he wouldn't be in his tiny apartment.
Yeah.
And I would tell him how like when everyone would go to the dining hall, like I would then go to the store, I'd get a bunch of food and eat it in my dorm when no one was there. And we were starting to figure out like, this isn't all right. Like this, we're having a serious issue.
Right. Okay.
What I found out was, so my senior year of high school wrestling, my coach introduced me to intermittent fasting, and he introduced me to this method called the Warrior Diet, written by Ori Hofmeckler. And basically it's 20 hours fasting, 4 hours eating every day, which is just like, you don't have binge eating and you want to try to get binge eating disorder, do that.
No kidding.
That's a full,
you have 4 hours to eat 2,500 calories. Go.
Yeah, 4 hours.
Dive into it.
And so I did intermittent fasting from senior year in high school all the way through freshman year in college. And I remember I was back at my mom's apartment in Boston, and I was just, my friends had asked me, they're like, do you want to go out to breakfast? And I was like, I gave them some like cockamamie excuse, like, no, like I can't or whatever. But the reality is I was fearful of going to breakfast. Like I was scared of it because I was like, if I have breakfast, then I'm not going to be fasted. And I remember in my head being like, this makes no sense. I was like, for years, people have eaten breakfast and they've been able to be lean and strong and all this stuff. I was like, why am I scared of having breakfast? Mm-hmm. So I looked myself in the mirror and I was like, starting tomorrow, you're eating breakfast every single day. Like that. And that was it. That was the rule I made with myself. Mm-hmm. And from the moment that I started eating breakfast from that day, I haven't binged since. And it's about like a decade, almost 10 years ago.
Wow.
And so that was literally it, because what would happen is I would not eat breakfast, not eat lunch, and save all my calories for dinner because I would get anxiety about going to bed hungry.
Yeah.
But when I started eating breakfast and eating lunch, it was sort of counterintuitive, but that anxiety went away because I wasn't starving myself all day.
Right. Man, that's interesting. I would imagine we had actually a female on maybe 10 or 15 episodes ago who now travels across the States and gives talks about athletes that deal with eating disorders and whatnot. But man, like wrestling in itself and really Olympic weightlifting, kind of our world,
any weight cutting sport
has to just, like produce so much of that. And I wonder if there in that industry if there is enough proactive approach or teaching available or resources available to like steer away from that type of pattern from reoccurring. And maybe it's just because like when we, 10 years ago in high school, like that was just what everybody did. And the science wasn't necessarily there. Or the data maybe wasn't necessarily there, but man, I don't know of anything like that.
Yeah.
You guys come from the wrestling world. I was a hockey player, so I didn't have to really worry about weight. But yeah.
I would say it's pretty prevalent still because they're, at least in male athletes for sure, because there's such a stigma with like, you're a pussy if you say that you might have an eating disorder.
Yeah.
So that's what I think male athletes, it's still a huge issue. I think our female athletes, the stigma is going away more. Yeah. And I think in general, it's going away more just with the knowledge that one, it's not as, I don't want to say as big of a deal, but it's not like, it's much more subtle than people think it is. You know what I mean? It's not like you see in a movie where this person is like emaciated and they're like in a room that's painted black and like all this stuff, it is definitely. And like Jordan said, he probably never actually really thought about it that much until he got to college because he was just gradually, he was wrestling and he was just doing what everybody else was doing. So it just feels normal. It doesn't necessarily feel bad until you're out of that
until
world.
you remove yourself from that.
Or until you start having like an extended period of being like, whoa, like I'm not eating the way that I need to either fuel performance or the way that normal people do or whatever. So
I think it's so funny as an adult. I think we tend to discount how smart kids are.
Yeah.
If a kid wants to trick you, they'll trick you. I mean, I remember like my mom would get worried because she would be like, I don't see you ever eating. So then I would like specifically, I'd figure out ways to like maneuver food on my plate to make it look like I ate more than I actually did. Yeah. And then I would like specifically wait until I saw her to put something in my mouth and eat so that she would like, okay, she'd be calm now. Oh, well, look, I saw him eating something there. Yeah, but then like, she didn't know that I'd chewed it and then spit it out in the trash can, whatever. It's like, if kids don't want you to know, they're going to do a really good job. Smart. And it's hard, especially with something like this. Like, it's not you can't just see it. It's not visible on the outside.
Sure.
So, and not to mention, it's hard to make someone eat who doesn't want to eat.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, you can't force that person to do it.
Force them to eat. And so there's so many aspects and issues with this. But I will say, since I've spoken about it more, and since I've gotten into jujitsu and I've been talking about it more, even like yesterday, I made a big post about how I cut weight for my jujitsu competition.
Yeah.
I've gotten so many messages from former wrestlers, current wrestlers, and jujitsu athletes who are like, man, I didn't know that what I'm going through is an actual issue. Like I didn't realize that it was an actual problem until you started talking about it. And I realized, oh my God, like I have food anxiety. Oh my God, like I won't go out to eat with my friends. Oh my God, like I'm being super, super, super restrictive. So I think it's very prevalent. It's just people are really good at hiding it.
Yeah. Well, I know that like on our end, like the MHSAA does a good job of like before the season, they have to have somebody who's like a registered dietitian come to every high school team and give them a talk about like proper nutrition, like behaviors. And on the college end, they're doing a much better job of doing the alpha body fat testing and then having sports psychiatrists or psychologists and dietitians just make those college athletes more aware. And so I think in the wrestling world, for sure, it's becoming less and less of a prevalent thing. I think people understanding performance nutrition, all those kinds of things.
Coaching is changing too.
Yeah.
Like just like, you know, the health industry in general, everything's kind of going proactive and holistic and, you know, I guess just like whole food based. So I would assume that the resources are only increasing for students and whatnot. But speaking of, I guess, like along the lines of your diet, one thing that I find very interesting and not a lot of, I don't want to call you an influencer because I don't know if you like that, if that's something
He's
that
the anti-influencer, if anything.
I know, no kidding. But like your transparency with that cut was awesome. Like I liked how there were so many times where just like, even on your story, you would almost joke about, oh no, my weight went up. Like, you know, what am I going to do? I'm not going to make weight. But in reality, like that's just the natural path of losing weight, right? Like we see those fluctuations day to day, every 12 hours even. So your transparency and all of that is, I love but have you ever had any like backlash on anything like that? Almost like talking, not like against the stigma, but you know, like these fitness professionals on Instagram and stuff I think you've probably talked about it quite a bit, but it's like, eat this supplement or drink this tea and you will make this weight cut. When in reality, like you're an open book when it comes to what you're eating. What type of, I guess, obstacles or backlash have you ever had from something like that?
So at this point, I don't really get any backlash from people who are like, oh, you got to try these tummy wraps or like this supplement. Like because I think those people know that it's nonsense and like those people, they're aware that they aren't educated. So like, they're not going to get in a debate with me about it.
Sure.
The backlash that I get is actually mainly from a lot of the body positive community, who says something like, and I'm all for body positivity. I'm just not for lying and for making it up,
for
right?
bullshit.
Like I'll be honest, but I think everyone, like, you should work towards having a healthy relationship with your body. But I think just saying, just love your body when someone doesn't love their body will do more harm than good. Yeah. It's like telling someone who's depressed to just love yourself. It's like, well, that's a really good idea. Just tell someone who's depressed to just love themselves, and now they'll love themselves.
It's like, oh, thanks. That kind of thing is like somebody being in a river and they're drowning, and you're standing outside the river going, just swim over here. Just stop drowning.
Right. So I'm all for body positivity, but let's have a realistic perspective on how to get to a place in which you can have a good relationship with your body. So one of the issues when people say like, oh, you shouldn't be weighing yourself every day. You shouldn't be showing yourself weighing yourself every day. Like, that's promoting disordered habits. I'm promoting a very healthy relationship with the scale, because when you tell people that the scale is evil and you shouldn't weigh yourself because it's the scale, well, what are you doing? You're creating a fear around a fucking piece of plastic.
Right.
You're creating a fear around it. So you tell them not to weigh themselves, that the scale is evil. Don't ever listen to it. What happens when they go to the doctor and the doctor says step on the scale? Like, they're going to have a panic attack because of the fear you instilled within them.
Right.
For me, I'm like, listen, let's step on the scale every day without any emotion. You look at it, you see what you weigh, and you move on. It doesn't make you happy when it goes down, doesn't make you upset when it goes up, because it's just data. So I do get backlash on that front. It has been less and less over the past, since I actually did the Big Mac challenge, which was just about a year ago now.
It's epic, by the way.
But
if you guys, oh man, our listeners might not know. So can you talk about that Big Mac challenge really quick?
Yeah. So basically it's literally published, I think, just about a year ago. For 30 days, I ate one Big Mac a day every single day. And the whole purpose, it wasn't to say that Big Macs are healthy, and it wasn't to say I want people eating more McDonald's or fast food. The purpose was just to show people that you can enjoy your favorite foods in moderation and still lose weight and live a healthy life. And so for 30 days, I ate one Big Mac a day every day. While eating my regular diet, I just added one Big Mac to it and managed my calories, and I lost 7 pounds.
That's amazing. Have you had a Big Mac since?
I've had 2 Big Macs since. Yeah.
Good for you.
Wow,
But
nice.
the thing I like more is the McGriddles. The McGriddles.
Get
out of town. Amazing.
Yeah.
I would have made it a McGriddle challenge, but the Big Mac has just more notoriety, and there's
Sure.
that's why I chose.
That's something that we constantly talk about food and vices and et cetera on this show. But fast food is, like, for both of us, is one of my favorite things in life. And the fact that you were able to pull that off and be like, look, I did this. I enjoyed it. Well, I don't know if you enjoyed it every day, but I'm sure the first week or so was probably pretty good. But then you also lost weight. Like, that's a big FU to everybody that says, you can't do that.
Correct.
And lose weight.
Or that calories aren't what matter.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I want to get on that subject too, because that's
quick tangent though. What is your go-to fast food meal?
Like favorite? Like if are you drunk or are you sober?
Oh,
Hey, honest question. It's going to be McDonald's probably regardless. But.
You can pick whichever one.
Yeah.
Man, I'm going to have to go through one of two. So I'd say just walking around, I'd probably go into Wendy's and get the spicy chicken sandwich meal, like crispy spicy chicken sandwich is super good.
Absolutely.
With fries and a Frosty. The other one is I just love KFC, like extra crispy. Like
really?
I love KFC. KFC, like fried chicken and pizza are my 2 favorite foods ever. Dude. And so if I see a KFC immediately, I'm like, oh fuck, I'm gonna go to the KFC.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. I would. KFC's good. I don't know if I've ever had a really good, I don't know, I feel like every time I go to KFC, it's always just all oil and I can't enjoy it.
Maybe KFC's better in New York.
But maybe it is. Do you have Chick-fil-A in New York? Yeah,
we do have Chick-fil-A's. I like their waffle fries.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Their spicy chicken sandwich, I think, is better than Wendy's, but I don't want to argue. So I have some questions that we reach out to kind of our listeners. And then we're both actually, Telly also does coach at a CrossFit gym, just a different gym, but we have quite a big community between the two of us. So we reached out and we're like, there's any questions that you guys most definitely want us to ask Jordan, let us know. And we got some back. So if you don't mind answering some of those, that would be awesome. But this is one that you're going to probably have a difficult time, just maybe not focusing on one, but what is in your mind, the biggest fitness myth?
There's a lot.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
We've done 2 episodes on them already.
I know.
You know what? I'll go sort of a different route. And I'm not going to say the celery juice or T-tox or detox or any of that stuff. I'm going to go more towards the psychology route and sort of the myth that is underlying in most people's psyche that they aren't necessarily objectively aware of. And I think what I mean by that is, as soon as someone has a quote unquote bad food, whether it's Chick-fil-A or Wendy's or McDonald's, as soon as they have a bad food, they think they screwed up. And that, in my mind, that's a myth. You did not screw up. The only way to screw up is if you quit altogether. So what'll happen is people will have the Big Mac, they'll go to Chick-fil-A, they'll go to KFC, they'll go to whatever. They have the meal, or maybe they went to a birthday party or whatever, had a slice of pizza, had a slice of cake. They think they screwed up. Maybe they go out to Mexican food on Friday night and they have chips and salsa and they have several margaritas and they have the quesadillas and they get pissed off They're like, I ruined all my progress. I ruined everything. So then they go back home and they have a sleeve of bagels and they have some more ice cream. And then they wake up Saturday morning and they're like, oh my God, what did I do? Like I gained 5 pounds. I ruined it all, whatever. I'm just going to like go nuts this weekend and I'll get back on track on Monday. So then they spend all day Saturday and all day Sunday eating and eating and eating and eating and eating because they know on Monday they're going to start restricting themselves again. When the reality is if they knew from the very beginning that they didn't screw up because they went to Mexican food on Friday fucking night and they just enjoyed themselves and got back on track on Saturday, they would have been totally fine.
Sure.
But they perpetuate this issue by justifying saying fuck it and going off track and eating as much as they can just so they can restrict on Monday. Like that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like no one would tell their best friend if their best friend was like, oh, I went to Mexican food. I had all this food. I had all these drinks. Like, I like, what do you think I should do? No one would be like, oh, I think that you should just binge eat the rest of the weekend and then get back on track on Monday. Like,
actually, that's the exact advice I give Ryan.
They'd be like, listen, you had fun on Friday night. Like just wake up on Saturday, get some water in, get some coffee, like maybe go on a walk and get started again. And that's it.
Right.
But for themselves, they're so hard on themselves. They're their own harshest critic. And it's very easy for them to just be like, well, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and get back on track on Monday. So for me, the biggest myth is in our own head that we justify by thinking like, you know what? I fucked up. And that's not true. You're lying to yourself.
Right.
Yeah. It's too bad people don't take the same approach to their nutrition that I feel like people do with their training, you know, like
or their jobs or school or
sometimes you else. Like you do have a light day of training or sometimes you're all the way off, you know, and then, but it's not like because I didn't lift on Friday, now I'm just going to not lift.
Right.
Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Or you have a bad presentation at work and it's like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to quit my job.
Yeah.
Like,
or let's say you're driving down the road and you get a flat tire. Are you just going to slash the other 3 tires?
Right.
Because you have a flat tire, or are you going to fill that one up with air and then fucking keep going? It's like, just because you had Mexican food on Friday night does not mean that you should slash the other 3 tires and just give up the rest of the weekend.
Right.
Just get back on track.
Yeah. It's a good analogy.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Another one was, how do you approach nutrition for a new client that has absolutely zero knowledge of nutrition in general?
It's a great question. So basically, for me, I'm going to start with helping them just count calories, mainly because when you start with counting calories, you are going to, just through that process of learning, you're going to learn a tremendous amount about food, right? So some people are going to, we need to talk about like the vitamins and the minerals and all this. No, you don't. No, we need to talk about the Krebs cycle and no, shut the fuck up. No, you don't. Like, you need to know how much you're eating. That's really like the first thing you need to know how much you're eating.
You
That's
have data. Yeah.
And what'll happen before because everyone knows fruits and vegetables are good for you. Everybody, unless you're like hardcore carnivore and get the fuck out. It's like everyone knows.
Joe Rogan.
Fruits and vegetables are super good for you. Protein is good for you. But if you don't know what constitutes a protein, there's a problem, right? So usually what will happen is when people start keeping track of how much they're eating and what they're eating, seeing it in front of their face, just having written it down, they're going to be like, oof, I didn't realize that I had that many M&Ms and that many Doritos and that many of this, like all in one day. So just by keeping track of it and counting it, all of a sudden they're going to be like, oh, you know what? I'm eating like an asshole. I need to change this.
Sure.
So from there, then they'll start looking into it. Oh, wow. Like I didn't realize there were this many calories in tortilla chips. I had no idea that 8 tortilla chips was this many calories. Yeah. Wow. So now you start to learn. Now you can start to learn moderation and portion control. You start to learn what's in certain foods. So for me, just start with calories and then from there work towards protein, from there work towards carbs and fats. And by that point, you'll have enough of a knowledge base where you can start to teach yourself other things if you're interested. But if all you know and understand is calories and protein, and you can moderate your portion control from there, like you're better off than 95% of people.
Yeah. That's interesting because the first post that I liked and saved of yours was you were doing infographics at the time. This was a couple of years ago, and it was the meh and great protein sources. We were just talking about is at the high school, I could not tell you how many parents and kids tell me that they're eating lots of peanut butter. So they're getting lots of protein.
Yep.
And that's one of those things that like, if you just got on MyFitnessPal and you logged and looked at the calories of your peanut butter, you would realize you're not getting almost any protein. And that's just by being aware. It's 100%. Like you said, like people will just be better off just by being aware.
Yeah, I mean, because on the container it says good source of protein with a green check. Like,
Yeah,
cool,
no
I'm having good. But then you actually I had like 4 grams of protein. That doesn't seem like a lot. That's weird. It's like, yeah. So just literally by being aware of it is the first step.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I like how you approach the nutrition almost like training again, going back to that, where counting calories is like your push-up, air squat, TRX row, like your basic push, pull, hinge, squat kind of theory there as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I can't believe we have yet to talk about this. Well, we also usually do this in the beginning of the episode, but what's your go-to alcoholic beverage to enjoy?
Honestly, probably just some type of a beer. If I'm out, I'm going to get an alcoholic drink, like oftentimes like a Moscow Mule. Like
Sure.
I do that a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty easy. I like Stella.
Sure. It's good beer.
I'm going to say Ryan likes the old Busch Lights, Busch Latte.
Oh, dude, you can't beat it. It's camping beer.
A crisp, cold, refreshing Busch Latte.
We're also obviously bourbon guys, but are you a bourbon drinker at all?
Not much. I mean, I'll have it if it's there, but it's definitely not my go-to.
Yeah. Right.
Do you have any like vice or anything in particular, like fancy that you really enjoy?
I mean, watermelon, right?
Love watermelon.
Right? Am I right?
I think the fanciest thing that I own that I really like is slippers. And I was never a slipper guy, but my fiance, she started. So I had slippers that were like moldy and old, and I never wore them. And she just threw them out without telling me. And I got super mad. I was like, I wore those all the time. She was like, I don't want them. And so she got me these new slippers like a year ago, and I'm a big slipper guy. So that's like the one
big slipper guy.
Like, that is the
Friday night slipper time. Love it.
That's
but we haven't talked about Westside at all.
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of good stuff to talk about. But yeah, for those of you guys who don't know, Jordan did train at Westside Barbell, probably the most famous gym, other than maybe Gold's Gym in Venice Beach. Mm-hmm. I mean, so how did you get that opportunity? What was that like?
So basically, I was a freshman in college. I had stopped wrestling. And I think it's a very natural transition for wrestlers to go to powerlifting. You just see a lot of like old high school wrestlers going into powerlifting for whatever reason. And I was obsessed with it. And this was in about 2009, 2010. And this is when Westside was really like starting to make a name. I think because YouTube had come out recently and Louis was putting videos on YouTube. And I remember watching Louis' YouTube videos just like in a trance, like this guy.
Yeah.
He's amazing. And like he's incredible, but he has this way about him that is very easy to create a cult-like following. And that's what he did. Like he would just talk about the maximal effort method, dynamic effort method, chains and bands. And I was like, oh my God, this guy, he's a genius. And so I was getting super into powerlifting, and I was in college, and I hated college. It was just like, I absolutely hated it with all of my heart.
Really?
And so I just got all of my frustration out through lifting. And I remember I almost dropped out of college, but I wrote Louis an email just being like, listen, I'll take the trash out. I'll clean the floors. Like, let me just come train there. And the reason I did that actually is because I saw an old article on his website. Someone had basically said, Louis, you can only train heavyweights. Like you only have heavy guys. You couldn't do this with a lightweight. And Louis was like, fuck you. Like, I'm going to get a light guy. I'm going to make him like a world champion. Da, 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 da. And I was like, I'm a light guy. Like, I'll do it. So I wrote him
It's me.
It's literally like, please put me in, coach. Put me in, coach. And so I wrote him an email, and I didn't expect to hear back. And apparently I must have had my cell phone number in the signature, because he replied via email. He said verbatim, I still have these emails. For the email he replied to, he goes, our weakest guy squats 800 pounds. What do you have to offer?
A quarter of that would be my answer.
just one sentence. Our weakest guy squats 800 pounds. What do you have to offer? And I remember sitting in my college dorm being like, oh man, number one, I can't believe he replied to me. Yeah. Number two is like, I can either be very respectful or very aggressive. And I went with very aggressive. And I basically wrote, I don't give a fuck what your weakest guy does, what your strongest guy does. I'll come in there and I'll outwork all of you. And
damn.
And I didn't hear back, and I thought I ruined it. But I must have had my cell phone number in the signature, because several days later, I got a voice message from Louis Simmons, and I still have the message saved on my phone this day. Basically, it was like, Jordan, it's Louis Simmons from Westside Barbell. I got your email. Let's hop on the phone and talk. So we got on the phone the next day, and he spoke for about an hour about Westside and the conjugate system. And he invited me out there for basically a tryout. He's like, we'll see if like you can actually do what you said you were going to do. So I go there with my mom, this like sweet little Jewish woman, like comes out.
It's amazing.
Probably the only one of like her to ever go into Westside Barbell. Just like, she had no idea what she was getting into. She had no idea. People have to understand, this isn't like a regular gym. Like, you don't have a membership there. There's not like a key card. Like, you're only there if you're invited. And the only way you're going to know the address is if Louis tells you. So we go into this industrial park. And my mom is like, oh my God, these men walking around are giants. Yeah. Like, they're huge, tattooed, like big, dangerous men. And so we walk in, and Louis walks up to me, like, he's shirtless. He has his squat suit on, and his nose is pouring blood down onto his chest.
Oh, perfect.
and my mom like looks like she's about to cry. So she leaves. She just walks right out. She's like, I'm going to go wait in the car. And Louis is like, you must be Jordan. I was like, yep. He was like, all right, like, let's go to rack pulls. And I was like, literally walked in, like, hadn't done anything yet. He's like,
you wearing like jeans?
Yeah. Just like, I didn't know I was going to start working out, but just walk right over. He's like, all right, let's do rack pulls. I was like, all right, like, how heavy, how many sets and reps? And he goes, as heavy as possible until it hurts too much. And I was like, all right. And so I did that. And then I was like, what's next? He was like, SS bar squats, like SS bar, low box squats. I was like, how many sets and reps? And he goes, as heavy as possible until it hurts too much. Wow. I was like, all right, what next? Glute ham raises, as heavy as possible until it hurts too much.
When did you stop asking the question?
No more, like, coach, no more.
For 2 days in a row of that, just like the most sore, most tired, most wrecked I've ever been. And at the end of the second day, Louis was like, all right, I'll see you over the summer. Dang. So I left, and I went to Bob Evans' restaurant with my mom after that. And she was crying, and she was like, I don't want you to come here. I know this is a big opportunity, but I don't want you to come. I was like, Mom, I'm coming. Like, I can't believe I just got offered this opportunity.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I trained at Westside for about 4 months, and my total increased by 300 pounds. And
that's a decent 4 month increase.
Fine, Jesus.
Especially for a guy of your size. What were you, like 132? What was the weight?
I walked into Westside weighing 127.
That's an insane increase for a guy at that body weight. Like, it's
Brandon
insane
Lilly,
for anybody, but especially at that body weight.
Brandon Lilly looked at me, and he was like, you a cross country runner?
I'm just picturing your mom like being there, like in that situation with my mom being like, Jordan, those monsters are going to eat you.
Oh yeah. She was so scared. She was like, I'm petrified. Like, these guys can, like, they can kill you. And I was like, I know, but like, I got to do this.
Yeah. I can run faster than them.
Yeah, I'm a cross country runner.
Maybe,
but maybe I can't, because these guys are like, they could cover what I could do in 10 strides in 1 stride.
Yeah, that's true. So do you still stay in contact with Louis at all?
Yeah, I do. Tom Barry is like, he actually started an internship the same day that I started training at Westside. He's the Irish guy there. He used to do MMA.
Yeah.
Him and I talk very frequently.
That's awesome.
Louis is not a big phone guy. So like, he's, so occasionally we talk, but mainly with Tom.
That's what I can see a lot of the Westside influence, just not even like, obviously, you know, conjugate necessarily, but like the way you go about doing stuff, I can see that influence in what you do. Cause Louis is probably one of the most no bullshit people in the fitness industry. Like, he's like, you know, 45 pounds is 45 pounds on the bar, motherfucker. Like, that's what you're lifting, and you can't fake that. Yep. And we're just going to outwork you, do more volume, do more, you know, whatever. And that's how we're going to go about beating you.
Yeah.
The other thing about Louis, and I really have to say this, because sort of it made him out to be like this scary, big, scary guy. The way that I really try and emulate Louis is to be as kind and generous as possible. I mean, if you really think about it, this guy who's already famous, already very wealthy, gets on the phone with a 21-year-old college kid who just told him that he was going to outwork everyone he fucking trains, who are all world champions, by the way. And I go to Ohio, and he lets me train with him 11 times a week. And he takes me out for breakfast every day, lunch every day, pays for every meal.
Oh, cool.
Like I sit with him every day after training. He asks me what I learned. He says, ask me any questions. He paid for my Westside Barbell certification exam, which was several $1,000s. Like he didn't know me from anybody.
And you were a random kid off the street.
Random kid. And literally it was funny because all the lifters there, Brandon and AJ, they were basically like, yeah, you should stay, drop out of college, come and lift. I was ready to get a Westside Barbell tattoo on my chest. I was ready to just like stay there. And Louis was the one who took me aside. He was like, I don't want you staying here. I was like, I want you to go back to college. He's like, listen, I'm tatted head to toe. I've been to prison. Like no one's going to let me come speak at college or speak. Like they won't take my advice seriously. He's like, I want you to go back and teach people the right way to lift. And he was like, that's why you're here. He's like, so you can go and teach people the right way to do this stuff.
That is so cool.
Like no one knows this side of Louis. Like it's not really what's put out publicly, but he's the most kind, generous man I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's
a cool story.
It might not even be the necessarily persona he wants to get off. Maybe he wants to keep that a secret, but that's what an incredible, lesson to carry on with you in the future. And that, I'm going to try to take that, into the coaching that I do. Yeah. I'm lucky enough to get interns that come from a local college and come work with me. And I try to do some of that stuff, but I feel like I could probably do more.
Yeah.
Even like you were saying, it was nice that I did this podcast because some people won't be on the podcast with you unless you have X number of downloads. It's like, I can't get on the fucking phone with these guys for an hour when like Louis spent 4 months with me every day, multiple times. Like, get out of here. Like get off your high horse. Like if someone can't sit down and have a conversation with two like-minded individuals, you're out of your fucking mind.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. That's awesome. I got a couple funny ones. We tend to joke quite a bit and make fun of each other, probably more than we should when we're on these things. But I have a couple funny questions. I'm going to throw you a couple curveballs. Let's start kind of light. What's your guilty pleasure other than slippers, obviously?
We'll call it pizza.
Pizza?
Yeah, pizza.
Favorite pizza topping?
Pepperoni pizza.
Just classic.
What's the best place in New York?
There's a lot of really good places.
I can only imagine.
My old apartment, right where I proposed, there were 3 places right around it that were all the best places I've ever been to. So Joe's Pizza, very famous. It's actually like where the Spider-Man movie was filmed.
Sure.
So Joe's Pizza, Bleecker Street Pizza, and then John's of Bleecker are all within like a 100-foot radius of each other. And those 3 are my favorite places.
Wow.
This one's kind of funny. If peanut butter wasn't called peanut butter, what would it be called? You don't have to answer. It's fine.
Nut cream.
Damn it. That was good. Tully, do you have one? We usually have a couple that we end podcasts with, but I also want to learn kind of about Gary V and how you met that dude.
We could do like 30 episodes and I feel like we wouldn't cover all the good stuff.
We did cover nut cream though. So let's just make sure that we check the box.
Yeah. Is that going to be your first like big health product? Cause like right now you're not selling like your line of supplements. Why not Syatt nut cream?
So how did you meet Gary? And then where did that relationship stem from? So
I think you guys will like this story. So basically I started making content in July of 2011, actually when I was training at Westside. One of the guys who was my mentor at that time, JC Dean, was like, dude, are you at Westside Barbell? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, we need to get you a fucking website so you can write about this stuff. And I was like, I don't know how to make a website. So he made me a website, but just casually made me got me a WordPress, transferred it over to my name. And he was like, start writing. And I was like, about what? What do you want me to write? He's like, just write helpful information. It's going to help people, write good content that helps people. So I had no idea what to do, but one time a week, every single week, I was releasing a new article. At that time, a lot of the stuff about the conjugate method, but then it turned into just regular strength training and nutrition and mindset. I did that once a week, every single week. And I would say for the first year and a half, I had about 20 people reading my articles, 10 of which were my mom.
I know. My mom shares our podcast.
Dawn's listening right now.
Yeah. And that's just the truth. And I say a year and a half of every single week. And you don't write an article in a few hours. Like an article takes 12, 15, 20 hours to write just based on the research, coming up with the content idea, researching it, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. So I had no idea an online business was possible at this time. Like online coaching wasn't really a thing. I was just writing content to help people. That was it. And in 2012, I wrote an article that was to date one of my least favorite, least popular, least read articles ever. It was 3 ways to have better posture if you work at a desk. Just like no one liked that article. People tend to not be huge on the posture stuff. Like they're like, whatever, just tell me how to fucking get a 6-pack. Yeah. So like, it didn't do that well. But one person who is this guy who is an accountant in the Midwest happened to read the article, and he left a comment on the article. And I didn't know him. I didn't know who he was, but I replied to the comment and I answered the question that he had. And that was it. I didn't know who he was. I didn't hear from him again. That was it. It turns out that accountant in the Midwest several years later would move to New York City, become a personal trainer and a change of career. He ended up meeting Gary through that change of career, and he became Gary's personal trainer. And his name is Mike Vacanti. He's one of my best friends in the world. He actually lives like right across the street now. And, he had a 2-year deal with Gary Vaynerchuk. And at the end of his 2 years, Gary was like, Mike, who's going to coach me next? And he was like, I think I know a guy. Now, the reason he thought of me is number 1, because of the article I wrote in 2012. Number 2, because I replied to his comment and answered his question. And number 3 is because it was posture related. And Gary had a lot of postural issues and a lot of pain in his back and hips and knees and neck. So he reached out to me, and I was living in Israel at the time. And he was like, hey man, do you want to coach Gary Vaynerchuk? And I was like, shut the fuck up. Like, that's not real. And he was like, no, really? So I was living in Tel Aviv. So I flew from Tel Aviv to New York for 36 hours. I coached Gary for an hour, flew back to Tel Aviv. I didn't tell anybody that I did it. I was just like, I couldn't believe this is even real. And 6 weeks later, I get a text message from an unknown number, just like I've never spoken to before, just being like, are you ready? And I was like, who the fuck is this? And then Gary sent me a picture of himself. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so excited. And then I moved to New York about a week later, and that's how it all started. But I like that story because number 1, it's very much Gary's thesis that like, you never know what piece of content is going to change your life forever. Yeah. But also it's like, be kind to people, answer their comments, answer their questions. Like, doesn't matter if you have 1 person or 1,000 people, like always be kind, always interact. And you never know, like this piece of content to date, very few people have ever read that article. It's not a really great article, but the right person at the right time happened to read it, leave a comment, and I replied, and that was that.
Nice. What an awesome message.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Like literally hits home. Yeah. Because we're not struggling with the idea of like, man, how do we get more followers, or how do we get more people to listen to this, or, are we putting out content that, people are even liking? And to know that you wrote something every week for 1.5 years before anything really started taking off, kind of puts it into perspective that we really haven't been doing this that long, and we're still getting better each podcast. Obviously we're getting different interviews and different names and whatnot, but man, just keep chugging along. And you never know who's going to listen or who's going to read, like you said, or what connection or relationship you're going to create out of something random. And
the thing is about, and this is for strength training, for nutrition, for business, content creation, it takes a lot of work to create one piece of content. Mm-hmm. A lot of work, but it's going to take many years before any of that content starts to be seen by people. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy for people to get down on themselves because like, oh, we're putting in so much work, but no one's finding our stuff. And it's like, oh, it's just not working. No, it's working. You're just being fucking impatient. Yeah. It takes a long time. It takes a very, very, very long time. It took me 1.5 years before I started to get any traction. And then it's not like you just get a little traction and boom, you explode.
Right.
From 2011 from July 2011 to 2015, I wrote at least 1 article a week every week. And that's bare minimum. That was only for my website. Crazy. That wasn't for guest articles that I started to get. That wasn't for Facebook posts or Instagram posts. It was at least 1 article a week every week, not to mention studying copywriting and sales. And I hired 4 different business coaches before I found one that was actually good. I spent thousands of dollars on business coaches before I found one that actually helped me. Like, there's so much that you go through that no one will see. Like, it's like no one will, people find me now. They're like, oh yeah, like you're an Instagram coach. I'm like, if you only fucking knew, like,
right. Yeah. Right.
Like the amount of years and time, like I built my business before Instagram ever existed. is people just don't know that.
Yeah.
And people probably also assume like, oh, he trained Gary Vee because his dad knew Gary Vee, or you know, his dad worked for Gary Vee's company, or you know, whatever. Like it was like handed to you, and it wasn't because of what you know, the work you had laid before that.
Correct. That's right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I can tell that you guys are good at what you do and you enjoy what you do. I just really want to make sure that you don't let the grind and the slow growth discourage you.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just be like, man, this isn't growing like I thought it would. And it's like, it would be like your client being like, man, I've been working out really hard for like 3 months and I still don't look like, you know, Kai Green. It's like, what the fuck? And that's exactly, that's how ridiculous it is. It's like years. I would say from what I've seen with myself and many other people, 5 years of relentless consistency before you start to see like a big shift.
Sure.
5 years.
Yeah.
So buckle up.
Yeah. And that can be related to a lot of things. Like, I mean, if you look at, you know, when we started, let's just say training together 5 years ago, like we wanted that instantaneous growth or PRs or, you know, qualifications to a competition.
Or
and now
abs.
It's like finally, 5-6 years later, we're finally competing at stages that we had dreamed about back then. And it really does take, that's a really good, I guess, number to put in your head too, because nothing that is worth, you know, working hard for is going to come very easy.
Yeah. I actually really love we did, of course, a deep dive stalking of your social media, and I got all the way back to your very first Instagram post. And
You're a creep, dude.
I think most of them, shut up. I want to be like, what's that guy's name on YouTube? I can't even think of his name. The guy that interviews rappers and like talks about like their middle school. Why can't I think of his name? Do you know? It's Nardwar. Do you not know who I'm talking about?
No.
You got to look up Nardwar. So he'll like interview like Lil Wayne, and we'll talk about like what his favorite thing to order in middle school from the cafeteria was. He like knows everything, and it like blows people's minds. So
what do you know all about Jordan?
Well, I know that his early Instagram posts have like no likes on them at all.
Yep.
And I bet half of them are from when you got a lot of followers, and then they're like bot followers going in and like liking half your stuff as well.
Man, I remember the first post I ever had that got 100 likes, and I was like, oh my God, it got 100 likes. I vividly remember this because I used to live in Boston, and like that's where like I started coaching.
Sure.
There was a personal trainer in Boston. It was 2014. He reached out to me and he said, hey man, I've noticed that you got 100 likes on your most recent Facebook post. Like I always knew you were going to make it one day. I'm so proud of you. Swear to God. And I was like, man, his name was Matthew. I was like, man, Matthew, that was super nice of you. Thanks. Like I used to think like 100 likes was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I got so excited on the first post that was 100 likes. The vast majority had like 19, 25 likes. Like it's just, that was for years.
Yeah.
For years. That's just how it was.
And we can kind of wrap this up here soon. I do want to ask just briefly, because this is obviously what you're really into right now, but you just recently competed in a jiu-jitsu tournament.
Yep.
How did that go? What was that experience like? Did it bring you back to wrestling?
Oh yeah, I loved it. I didn't do as well as I wanted to. So I won my first match. I did very well in my first match. Second match, I took the guy down. That's probably my biggest advantage coming from wrestling is like my stand-up's pretty good. And so I took the guy down, scored 2 points. Then we stood back up. I went to take him down again with a fireman's carry, which is one of my favorite takedowns in wrestling, but not that good for jiu-jitsu just because you leave an arm exposed, which I wasn't really aware of, but I learned from it. So I took him down, left an arm exposed. He got me in an arm bar. That guy, he went on, in the finals, he was winning. I was the only one who scored points on him the whole day. So no one else scored points on him. And he was disqualified in the final match because he did an illegal move. He was reaping the knee. And so it's just like he put the leg in a very dangerous position. So he was going to win, but he got disqualified with 16 seconds left.
Wow.
I felt bad for him because he's a really nice guy, just very talented. So I'm not happy with how the results turned out because obviously I wanted to win, but I'm very happy with that I did it. so basically I got some really good advice from a jiu-jitsu athlete. His name's Jake Watson. He was like, don't have expectations. He was like, set standards for what you must do in each match. He's like, you need to know, as long as you hit these standards, then you did your best, because you never know what's going to happen. You can't just say, all right, well, I'm going to win the whole thing. It's sort of like, well, yeah, I'm just going to have like a 6-pack. It's like, well, hold on. Just set a standard to help you get the 6-pack rather than just wanting the result.
Sure.
So for me, like, I wanted to score first on each of my opponents. I wanted to take them all down, which I did. And I wanted to make sure that I learned from it. So I filmed the matches and I learned exactly the mistake that I made. I'm not going to make it again. And I think that's a pretty good outcome.
That's awesome.
Nice. Did you get started in gi jiu-jitsu or no gi? Because I know a lot of wrestlers, like on my end, it was no gi jiu-jitsu. Isn't much easier transition. So
I initially thought that I wanted to do no gi. I didn't want any part in the gi just because someone choked me out with my gi, and I said, fuck this. Dude, it sucks.
No,
the gi is like going from like no gi is like doing regular chess.
Sure.
Like it's still very complicated. Once you add the gi, it's like doing 3D chess.
That's a really good way to put it.
So much more that you can do when the gi is on than when you don't have a gi.
Sure. And we're not talking about butter, right? Sorry, I had to. I had to.
I actually really like training with the gi now. With no gi and just wrestling, it's very fast paced, very, very, very fast paced. I think it's way more explosive, way faster. The gi forces you to slow down a little bit because you can get the grips on the gi and you can grab the other person. It's basically grabbing the other person's clothing. And so not as like crazy explosive, which as a beginner, I like, just because I can get to certain positions and I can think. I don't have to constantly be on the run. I don't have to worry about being outrageously explosive. And I'll get to positions. It's gotten better over the last year and a half. I've been doing jiu-jitsu now, but I remember when I first started, because I had the wrestling experience, it was relatively easy for me to take someone down or control them. But I would get to positions and I'd be like, I don't know what to do. Like I don't know what submission to do. I don't know what move next. I would literally be in the middle of a fight and be like, I don't know what to do. It's a very like scary thought to have. Like I don't know what to do right now.
Yeah.
And so I'd be like, cool, I did the sweep, right? I like got this person in this position, but like, what now? And it's literally after about like a year and a half, I'm just starting to get to the point where I'm like, all right, here's my option here. Here's my option here. Here's my option here. Yeah. If this doesn't work, here's what I can do here. I literally, within the last couple of weeks, I just got to the point where I realized, oh, if I pretend to do this, then his reaction is going to be this.
Yeah.
And then this. And this is like, it's such high level thinking. And I'm still like, I'm a white belt. I'm super beginner. I know basically next to nothing. But this is one of the reasons I love jiu-jitsu almost more than wrestling now, is because wrestling, I feel like, is very brute strength driven and very conditioning driven and very mentally driven. Jiu-jitsu, I feel like, is much more thought driven.
Sure.
There's so many more possibilities, and you can be not as strong and not as conditioned, but if you're technically more sound, you have a really great chance of winning.
Yeah, sure. It literally is just like chess.
Yeah, it's like, like I said,
I've done it like 3 times and I have no clue what I'm doing, but it's always very humbling too.
Yeah.
Right. Because you think you're super fit and I'm very well conditioned. And then a girl that weighs 65 pounds, makes me tap within 15 seconds. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. It's definitely super humbling. Even when among weight belts, you might think you're doing great. And then you go roll with like a brown belt or a black belt. And it's literally just like you're dying for like 5 minutes straight.
Dude, it's awful. And especially, I think going into it as a wrestler, I was like, it's going to be easy. Like I know how to do this stuff. I think one of the most demoralizing, I remember vividly, I think the most demoralizing experience of my life, and humbling, it would turn out to be a positive. But at the beginning, I go in as a wrestler. I was like, I wrestled my whole life. I have no issues whatsoever. I go up against like a purple belt and I can't move.
Yeah.
I literally can't move. Not to mention in wrestling, when you get someone in jiu-jitsu side control, usually you're fully sprawled out, legs are really long behind you, like basically just to try and you want to pin them. The goal is to pin them. In jiu-jitsu, the goal isn't to pin them necessarily. The goal is to establish control and then submit them. Mm-hmm. So the way that they hold you is different. And it's like, these guys are holding me in a way that in wrestling wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like I should be able to just hip thrust out of this. I should be able to like roll you over. But I remember this blue belt was sitting on top of me, holding me inside control. And he was like, you gotta try and get out of here. And I was like, bro, I can't fucking move. Like, I was so demoralized. I was like, it was not in my concept of reality that this would happen.
That's wild.
That's what the most humbling moment of my entire life was when I went to a jiu-jitsu class, and before I even got to find a partner, when we started rolling, this brown belt guy grabbed me by the gi. He was like, let's go. And in the first minute, he established full mount and then grapevine my legs and essentially made me tap only by crushing my diaphragm. And it was definitely I was like, if I met this guy on the street, he would actually kill me.
Yeah.
Like, I would be dead. So, all right. Well, before we wrap it up, I did think of my fun question, which was another thing that when I first saw your content was you were doing a lot of the Harry Potter, like workout, like Salazar, Slytherin, and that kind of stuff. So my question was, well, first of all, are you a big Harry Potter fan?
Of course.
Yeah. Huge Harry Potter.
I figured. What house would you be in?
I always like to think I'm in Gryffindor. I like Gryffindor a lot. I like what they stand for. I like the idea of like not just courage, but mainly standing up for other people who might not be able to stand up for themselves. That's like the one characteristic of Gryffindor that I've consistently seen that I really like.
There you
That's
go.
a good answer.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Well, I can't thank you. Like, we can't thank you enough for hopping on. It was awesome to meet you. You are literally the exact same person as you are in all of your Instagram videos, and that it shows the transparency and shows how real of a person you are. So from us to you, thank you so much for joining on and talking with us for an hour or so.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. This was great. Really. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I guess before we sign off though, is there anything that you're promoting or anything that you wanted to plug before we sign off?
Don't buy anything from me.
Okay.
Don't buy anything.
Thumbs up.
If you want to go look at my content, great. But don't buy anything until you at least look at my free content first.
Sure. All right.
You are the what did you say?
Anti-influencer.
I fucking love it.
I like it.
Thanks, man.